good afternoon, everybody. This is Lizzie Kosei, and I've got Kay Eichler. She is still in the building until Friday, and she is kind enough to have joined us today. I hope everybody had a really great break. We have got 3 more webinars for Get Ready in 2020. All of you have done an amazing amount of work, and we're really, really thankful for everybody who's kept with us and has kept up with everything. And we are looking forward to the next 3 webinars, and hopefully many of you applying for Ready Start later this year. So let's get started. So today's webinar's focus, we're going to start off by looking and reviewing coalition and governance pillars, because we have found that with our current Ready Start networks, there has sometimes been a little confusion between the two, and we just want to make it abundantly clear what the difference is, even before you begin to actually get involved in this work. We want to make sure you know what's what. Before we do that, we will review some questions and feedback we got from the previous webinar. So if you remember, where we left off in December, we had just done a governance deep dive. And so we had a good number of really thoughtful questions about governance. And so we'll get started with that, and that'll be the perfect introduction into the rest of our conversation today. As always, if you have any questions, please type them into the chat box, and we will address them as we see them. All right, so a couple of reminders. We've asked everyone to complete an analysis of current state and 1 SMART goal with strategies, resources, and performance metrics. We will address this later in the webinar. We are going to be looking at One Network's blueprint so far, and we're going to have a discussion of all of our blueprint work moving forward. So we'll address that a little later as well. So we have awesome news. Get Ready funding is going to be available until June 30th, 2020. Very excited about this. Originally, it was possibly going to expire in February, but we got an extension on all of those funds. I'm not sure yet if EGMS reflects this new change or not. The last time I checked, it didn't, but I have been in touch with our grants management folks to make sure they know this funding will be available until June 30th. That being said, we recognize that that's probably going to change some of your budgets based on the extension of time. Maybe you can spend your money in a different way than you originally intended. I know some people were hoping to use this money to send teachers to conferences or to be involved with something at a later date after February. So we're really excited that now you get the chance to do that. So feel free, by all means, amend your budgets if necessary. And if you have not yet completed your budget, please do it as soon as possible in EGMS. And after this, we just have 2 remaining webinars, the 15th and the 22nd. There is light at the end of the tunnel. And then come February, we are hopeful to have our Ready Start Network application released for cohort 3. And in April, those applications will be due. So here are some questions and feedback we got from the previous webinar. One person said, it would be beneficial to see examples from other agencies, networks, etc. It would be great to find out times and dates of some of the other Ready Start networks so we can try and schedule a visit to attend the meeting. And we thought this was a great idea to kind of see how their board meetings are working so far. So I have check-ins with the Ready Start networks, and I will try and start collecting some dates and provide for you guys. But if this is you that wants this, or if you think that this is something that would be a really good investment of your time, reach out to me directly, and so I maybe can find a Ready Start network closest to you, so that it wouldn't be traveling halfway across the state to attend a governance meeting. But I think that's a great idea. It is wonderful to learn from our current Ready Start networks and all that they're doing, and we want to use them as an example for how you could possibly set yours up in the future. So somebody else asked, how soon after becoming a Ready Start network would a governing body be expected to be in place? So if you become a Ready Start network, you'll have several months of technical assistance and preparation before you have to put down the roots of that governance structure. My estimation is that that would probably happen 4 to 6 months in. And leading up to that, you would have a lot of support from LDOE and examples of what other Ready Start network governing bodies look like. So I do think that after last week's webinar, some people were a little overwhelmed with the amount of work that goes into putting up a governance structure and creating bylaws and all that comes along with it. So I just want to assure you that if you become a Ready Start network, this would be something that would happen over time, and you receive a lot of guidance along the way to help you get there. And someone else asked, is the governing board established once a network has been approved as a Ready Start network, or should the governing board be established during the Get Ready phase? Great question, and that is that the governing board would happen well after becoming a Ready Start network. So in the Get Ready phase, we wanted to familiarize you with it. We wanted you to know in general what this would look like, but for now, you don't have to worry about creating any sort of governance structure. So one person, I kind of split their question into two different answers. So their first question was, I'm currently working with a group of partners to create our network's blueprint. Would these individuals be on the governing body? My answer to that is not necessarily. You're doing the right thing. You're incorporating partners into the blueprint process, which is exactly what we wanted to hear. If you become a Ready Start network, those individuals could potentially serve on the governing body. You don't have to make that decision yet. And we do want you to keep in mind, and we will talk about this in just a few minutes, but anybody who helps you, anybody who supports your cause as a Ready Start network, partners who helped you with your blueprint, those are all just broad coalition members right now. Those are people who are just helping you with the work and advocating on your behalf. And not everybody who helps you has to serve in a governing board capacity. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but just keep in mind that people are going to serve and help you in different ways, and it's not always going to be in that official governance structure. So secondly, they asked, we have not reached out to build new partners for our coalition. Would we need new partners on the board? And I think the board, they're referring to that governance structure. So ideally, yes, when you become a Ready Start network, you'll have to recruit and get new partners that are represented on your governing board. And as a network in the Get Ready cohort, however, you are not required to add to your existing coalition right now. You begin this work after becoming a Ready Start network. So when we say existing coalition, we said it like that because we want to let you know that the word coalition is kind of like a broad general term. And you already do have a coalition of sorts in your network. You have program partners that are your coalition right now, what we would say is your existing coalition. And when we talk about coalition building and Ready Start networks, that's more reflective of going outside of those program providers, reaching out to other members of the community. Who else needs to know about early childhood? Who do you want to have the ear of, and who do you want to be advocating on your behalf? So let's continue with the PowerPoint, and we'll dive into that a little bit more. So another concern was they need clarification on what you will expect of our governance. The example that you showed us was extremely intimidating. So governance structures for Ready Start networks will be expected to approve decisions about new funding and resources in your community to improve access to quality. And to do this, they will require a formal governance structure with bylaws. And I want to reemphasize, just because it seems like a lot of people have questions about this, when we say governance structures, those are not being formed unless you become a Ready Start network. You are not required to do anything related to governance right now as a Get Ready network. So when you said it was extremely intimidating, I totally understand and I agree. And I think it's a lot of work, and I put in the slide, it's new territory for most of us. I know most network leaders have never done anything like this, and even us at the department, this is kind of new territory for us as well, which is why we recruited some help to get us to better understand what this might look like. So if you do become a Ready Start network, creating your governance would take time. You'd receive technical assistance from us at the department. We would provide example bylaws to help you. This is not something that would have to happen immediately upon starting as a Ready Start network. This would take some time and we would help you get there. So let's talk a little bit more about coalition and governance. So as you remember, these are our 4 pillars of Ready Start networks. That blueprint we have been tackling a lot, and a lot of you are really close to being complete with finishing that, that document. We're really excited about the blueprints we've seen so far. I do want to say that these pillars, I almost wish this graphic could be kind of like a circle and they could lean on each other too, because they all depend on each other. You really can't build a coalition or form a governance without starting with that blueprint. But you also can't execute your blueprint and reach your goals without all of the other pillars as well. So these really, really are important, and we want to emphasize that they all kind of build on and depend on each other. So this is our model that goes into a little bit more detail about each of the 4 pillars, and we're going to look at coalition and governance today. As you know, your blueprint is establishing the plan. It's communicating what you want to be true about your community. If you successfully execute that plan, it has goals and strategies and a mission and a vision, and it really gives a clear direction of where you want your network to go. So your coalition asks the question, who do you need to build it? So once you get that blueprint into place, who in your community, which partners are necessary to achieve the plan? I love this sentence at the bottom here that says, consider carefully who needs to be informed, invested, involved, and or held accountable. So all of those questions are really, really important, each of those points, because like we've said before, your coalition is made up of different people who can help you in very different ways. Then your governance structure is how will you make decisions. So the governance is dictated kind of by those bylaws. It allows structures to be in place to successfully execute the plan. It allows for collaborative decision making and some shared responsibility. Once all of those are in place, then you can begin really what the ultimate goal of Ready Start networks are, which is to fundraise and come up with strategies for being, thoughtful about the additional resources you need to achieve your vision. But before we can even get to these fundraising strategies, you've got to have these other pieces in place. You can't just go out and immediately start trying to raise funds or recruit supporters without having a blueprint, coalition, and governance in place. So, looking at coalition and governance. Ready Start networks are going to recruit members of their community to be a part of this broader coalition and serve as advocates and supporters of their cause. And then a subset of that coalition can serve on their governing body. So the coalition will primarily serve as advocates, external champions. They're promoting the cause in the community. They might serve as potential funders or fundraisers. They also might be able to assist you in furthering your cause depending on their skill set. So for example, you might meet someone in your community who has experience in writing bylaws. So maybe they can help you draft your bylaws for your governance structure. Or you might meet someone in your community who's passionate about early childhood and is a news reporter. And so you might have the ear of the media through that person. So there's just different ways coalition members can serve you. But then once you get to governance, that is a formal structure that will help you make collaborative decisions. So I'm going to call Kay over here in just a minute, but this was her perspective on how to differentiate between coalition and governance. And coalition are the people you need to help you, and then the governance is the more structured for decision making. Okay, you want to take it over for a minute?
Sure. And like Lizzie said just a few minutes ago, it's like all of these pillars go together. Like Lizzie likes to visualize them leaning on each other. I like to visualize I'm looking down on them and I see all these strings of rubber bands like wrapped around them, crisscrossing them. So any way you think of it, just know that the pillars all interface with each other. So when you think of coalition, think of people. So your community network right now is primarily a group of publicly funded providers. You may have other people who attend your meetings and help you out. Your R&R might attend and be active in your network. You may have some other partners. Maybe you have an ancillary certificate program that attends. Maybe you have folks from one of the land grant universities, either Southern or LSU or another, who attend from time to time. But as your community network becomes a Ready Start network, it will expand to include additional stakeholders who are interested in supporting early childhood. Well, how will it expand? You're going to go out and recruit. You are going to use your blueprint and you're going to say, I want to talk to you about early childhood in our community. You'll go to perhaps the Ministerial Alliance. You may go to municipal government. You may go to the Rotary Club and do a presentation. And you'll take that blueprint with you and you'll say, I want to tell you about our community network. Here are the things we've been working on. We have these sites, these programs, and we now have goals for long-term goals to improve quality and access for families. This is important to our community. We think it's important and hope that you will be involved. So that's an example of how you will use that blueprint to recruit your coalition. As you get more exposure, you may do ads, you may put ads in the newspaper, you may do radio ads. You're going to build the group of people who know about and support, even if it's they support just by knowing about your community network. The governance is the structure for decision making. Ready Start networks will need to make decisions about funding and resources that align with your blueprint. Here again, here is the blueprint leaning on governance and governance leaning on the blueprint and governance leaning on the coalition. Who's out there? Who might serve on your governance structure? So your governance is the structure for decision making made up of people from your broad community coalition. You're going to, with that structure and those people, make decisions using the process that you define in your bylaws. So I hope that helps with the explanation. Certainly, we're willing to have more conversations with you about this.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't see any questions in the chat box, but if anybody had any, or if you want to raise your hand, if it's easier to verbalize it, if you have any questions moving before we move forward, please ask now. So this is something, oh, I see a question. Mary asks, so the governing body would make decisions about how we spend funds.
Yeah.
So, yes.
You'll certainly want their recommendation, Mary. You'll want them to endorse what you're doing. And hopefully through your work with governance, through your work with your coalition, you're going to have people who know and understand the strategies that you've laid out and why you need funds to go in a certain path. Ultimately, as lead agency, if you find yourself in the difficult situation of, recommending something that's not endorsed by your governing structure, which we hope won't happen, it's possible, I guess, that it could, there will be a way to work through that. We'll have to address that with our regulations, because ultimately we do know that lead agencies are responsible, and the department will put itself in a position to help you mediate that kind of issue if that arises. But yes, you're going to want your governance structure to endorse any decisions that you make about funding that you raise, or funding that comes to you specifically for the Ready Start Network through the state. So I hope that answers your question.
We have another question from Melissa that says, does the Ready Start Network take the place of the community network?
Your community network, so Melissa is in St. Landry Parish. And so you would become, if you choose to be a Ready Start Network, you will become Ready Start St. Landry. And so it's like a special designation for a community network that they're saying, we want the responsibility of, doing what we can do locally, of making decisions locally. We don't want the state making all of our decisions. We want to take that on ourselves. We feel like we know our community best and can best make decisions that help support families. So we want to be Ready Start. By becoming Ready Start, you become a specific network that has a designation, that you're receiving priority for any new funding or new seats that the state receives, and you are agreeing to operate according to public meeting laws and with a set of bylaws and a governing structure.
I'd like to explain Ready Start Networks as kind of like Community Networks 2.0.
Yep.
You're doing what you were doing before, but there are additional responsibilities and additional perks as well. I mean, in terms of like getting prioritized receipts and things like that. So, and additional funding and things like that. So, that was a really good question, Melissa. And thanks, Mary, for yours as well. Move on. And if you guys continue to have questions, please ask away. So this is something that we've shown before. This is a great visualization of the different partners who might help you if you become a Ready Start Network. We just want you to keep in mind that different people in your coalition can bring different skills and contributions to your community network. There's people who are going to be at your core. Those are going to be your staff. When it says board members, that would be your governance structure. So your governing body, people serving you in that capacity, are going to really be your core folks here. But as you go further out from the center, you might find people who are champions, go-to partners or consultants. You might find people who are supportive or potential future partners. Tertiary people might be those who you might need to do outreach to them to know what your cause is about. So there are different levels of people and organizations that you can reach out to when you start to form your coalition as a Ready Start Network. Again, I do want to say that these are not official designations. Like, you won't talk to someone and say, you're my secondary supporter here, but you will. I just want you to keep in mind that there will be different levels unspoken of all these different people that you want to reach out to.
That's a good way to frame that, Lizzie. And so for those people who, like me, are very concrete literal, that was that was helpful.
Right. Like
So-
you don't need to list these are my secondary, these are my tertiary people
This
necessarily.
is just a way to help you think of it. So I'm
Right.
thinking in my head right now of the various Ready Start networks that we have right now. In fact, I'm thinking of at least one who has found someone in the community who is really helping her step by step along the way. So they're part of her coalition, but they're not officially on the governing board. They may attend meetings every now and then just to get the lay of the land. We have others that have people, they help them as thought partners, help me think through this, you know, or maybe they can't attend meetings all the time, but they volunteer their time just as a thought partner.
Right.
Or an advisor. And then there are partners who, so you'll have some of your coalition, folks in your coalition, who will be interested in attending every meeting. Some will be interested maybe in working on a particular event or with helping you. Someone I think has a partner who's just helping them write bylaws. So there's all different types of involvement, and that's why we say think of the coalition as people who can help you get the word out, people who can help you do the work, or even people who will help you make decisions in your governing structure. It can be any of the above.
Great. So just to reemphasize what a governance structure is used for, governance structures for Ready Start networks help make collaborative decisions about early childhood with key members of your community. So they'll have each Ready Start network will have a representative governance structure that supports its vision and mission, and they will do so in the following ways. They'll ensure necessary policies and procedures are in place, approve and update the mission statement and plans for the network. So at some point when you feel like you have come to a stopping point with your blueprint, you would bring that to your governing structure and ask for their endorsement of your blueprint, so that you can say, not only did you create this blueprint, it has the support of all of your governing body, etc. They'll evaluate programs and initiatives in relation to the blueprint and endorse the allocation of funds to accomplish goals outlined in the blueprint. So, governance will provide process and structure necessary for funding decisions related to grants, private donations, and public dollars Ready Start networks receive. And this includes things such as coordinated funding requests and local resources generated. So governance structures, the reason, when it really boils down to why Ready Start networks are in place, it's because we want them to make decisions on the local level about how to improve early childhood in their community at a faster rate. And eventually what we want that to look like is finding private donations or getting additional grants or maybe receiving money from your mayor's office to help you fund seats. It looks like a lot of different things and it'll look totally different in every community. But at the end of the day, when those dollars come in, when you are receiving a grant or a private donation or public dollars, you have to have this governance structure in place to make it a collaborative decision-making process so that funding decisions receive a bit of legitimacy from your governance structure. So just a reminder, the components of a governance structure include that you would need to institute bylaws and you would also need to follow open meeting law requirements. So bylaws are the framework from which organizations govern and operate. They're used to guide the governing body's actions and decisions. And if you became a Ready Start network, you would receive ample guidance and examples of bylaws that are already in place. Additionally, if you become a Ready Start network and you start to have these formal governing body meetings, you would need to follow open meeting law requirements. That means you have to establish an annual calendar of regular meetings. Governance meetings have to be announced ahead of time and open to the public, and agendas and meeting minutes become public record. So again, this is not something you have to do as a get ready network. This is just something that would be instituted after several months of being a Ready Start network. Okay, so we have kind of reached the end of our review of governance versus coalition. I don't see any more questions in the group chat, but you will have an opportunity at the end to take the survey as usual, and there is space for you to ask questions there. And I try to address them at the beginning of all of our webinars. So if you have any lingering questions that you think of after the fact, or that you don't want to ask now, that would be a good place to ask them. So moving on, all of you have been very busy working on your blueprints. You have submitted them to me, at least the analysis of the current state and at least one goal. Some of you are at different phases with this. Some people have drafted 3 goals. Some of them have drafted mission and vision statements. But what I think is most important is that as we move forward with our blueprints, we want to make sure that our goals are SMART. That means they're specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. And I realized that a lot of you have not yet received feedback from me on your blueprints. And that is on me, and hopefully I will get that to you before the end of the week, if not the end of the day today. And I appreciate your patience there. I feel a little bit like the teacher in college that was always like, oh, I'll grade that paper. I promise I'm getting it to you. I know a lot of you have been patiently waiting for that feedback. So I will get you feedback on that. In the meantime, I did want to share an excellent blueprint example that came my way, and I have permission from the author to share it with you guys. I specifically wanted to look at her goals. So we're going to look at Ascension Parishes blueprint draft. So one thing I want to point out is her analysis of current state, which we don't have to read right now. But the analysis of current state is less than a page, which I think is ideal. I think most people are making it about 2 or 3 paragraphs, but a few are bordering on more than 1 page long. And I think we really want it to be something you can read in one sitting relatively quickly. So I would say this is kind of the ideal length for an analysis of current state. It's okay if yours is a little bit longer. And like I said, this is still a work in progress. So there might be some changes that still need to be made. But I just thought the goals were really, really specific and excellent in what we were looking for. So I wanted to show you those. So we scroll down, and goal number 1 is by the end of the 2024-2025 school year, we will increase access to high-quality early childhood for 2, 3, and 4-year-olds by increasing the number of publicly funded seats to meet 100% of the family demand. So what really stands out to me about this goal is that it is time-bound. They're saying by this particular date. I think that it is very specific and measurable. I also really like it because it's projecting into the future. It's kind of ambitious because we're looking 4 or 5 years down the line, but also something that could be very attainable. So remember that for each goal, you have a certain number of strategies and resources and performance metrics listed. So I'm gonna look at my list, and I see Mary McMahon is on, and I'm gonna unmute you, Mary. I kind of just want you to share a little bit with the group what the process was like and how you came up with this year and these numbers. and really just anything, any sort of insight into this blueprint development that you think might be helpful to share with the group.
Oh, okay.
Hey, Mary.
Hi. So I really just used the resources that you provided to us, along with my child count information. I looked at our performance profile information, and I just kind of went through, and the worksheet that you gave us, the data mapping, where we had to figure out, how many children are on the waiting list and those kind of things, that was really what helped me to decide, what our goals needed to be.
Oh, that's great. That was helpful.
Yeah, and so we decided to make our goal project into the future, just because we typically do like 5-year plans in our district. So like we have short-term goals, but then we have kind of longer term.
Right.
So I just kind of tried to put that in the same time frame so that the work that we're doing with this is not something in addition to any like school improvement planning things that we're doing. So they would kind of align.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and so I went through and I remembered, you said that we had to have a goal on access, and then we also had to have at least one goal on quality. So I tried to go through and
your quality goal.
Yeah. So when I went through all of our data, I really feel like we're meeting the needs of our 4-year-old families. And so that just helped me to see where the need was. And so then instead of putting the goal for goal number 1, instead of saying, we're going to increase the number of children we're serving from this number to that number, I decided, the family demand will change each year.
Yeah.
So we're meeting, if our goal is around a percentage of meeting a percentage of the family demand, regardless of how that demand changes, our goal still stays the same.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, I will say this, that other people have used specific numbers looking at their child count and looking at their at-risk cohort number, and if that's okay, if you are a network that you've used specific numbers, like say, we want to increase from serving 300 3-year-olds to 350 3-year-olds or whatever it might be, that's okay too. It just depends. That's why it's good that each person just kind of approaches it from their own perspective. So this works to do a percentage of just meeting family demand. And I think it makes a lot of sense.
And I chose to do that because it seems as if our trend of family demand is changing over time.
Right.
Because in our district, we're building a lot of new schools. And so our district is growing. So as people come into or moving into our parish, we're having to build more schools, but then our revenue is also increasing. So I just felt like the percentage was the best, the best way.
Yeah, that sounds great. And then can you talk a little bit about your quality goal?
Yes. So I really felt like, I know the access is important, but to me, the quality is what is truly, truly important, because if we are extending the number of children we serve, we need to make sure we're serving those children with high quality experiences. So I just went through and I kind of looked at our performance profile data for the past few years, and I just looked at, where we're making improvements and where we're not. Again, the instructional support is the lowest always.
Right.
And of course, we wanted to improve that. And so I put specific numbers for that, because I put where we are now, the 3.56, and then I projected, in order to be highly proficient, this is the number that we have to have.
Right.
And when I was thinking about our budgets and things like that, my teachers that work in our school system, you know, I have control over them. So I can pull them when I need to and provide professional development and all of that stuff. We have some in-house class trainers and that. But our true area of need is in our child care centers. And so when I was looking, we have of our 16, all of our 16 school-based and Head Start sites were proficient, but we only had 6 or out of 10 or 60% of our child care centers that were proficient, and that's a big discrepancy. Mm-hmm. So our goal is really around, we're going to provide our in-house teachers, you know, with professional development, but really focusing on our child care center teachers because, and so in our our budget for the Get Ready, we've included like stipends to do Saturday trainings for our teachers and summer trainings for our teachers. Because that's the only time we can really pull our child care center teachers and our child care directors, because it's really difficult for them to get away during the week. So we had a really good turnout at our last Saturday meeting. So we have another schedule coming up soon. We had more participants than we've ever had. So I really feel like that's how we're going to increase, you know, our instructional support. Mm-hmm. And then the last one was about, the goal was about curriculum. And for the most part, definitely all of our schools are using a Tier 1 curriculum, but not necessarily all of our child care centers because of the cost, or maybe they're only using them with certain age levels. So, and as you can see, that one just kind of, there were no strategies there yet. We're still thinking through that.
Yeah, that's I just thought this was an excellent example of a draft in progress. So we recognize that it's not quite done there. That's totally fine. Yeah, I thank you so much for sharing a little bit of your thought process behind some of your goals and how you reach those. I really, really appreciate you sharing, Mary. If anybody has any questions for Mary, please type them in to the chat box. But for now, I think we will move on. Thanks again, Mary.
Sure, no problem.
Okay. So we are in the final stretch of the Get Ready cohort. And it's pretty much time to complete your blueprints, which is wild because it kind of feels like we just started this process. But we have been through a lot of webinars and we've talked a lot about it. So the blueprint is about to get finalized. I know a lot of you are still waiting on feedback from me, so I will get that to you shortly. So what I think is a pretty realistic time frame would hope, and if it's not, let me know. If there is some hesitancy about this January 21st date. But if you would like to submit your final blueprint to me by January 21st, COB is department terms. I need to change that and make it close of business. Not everybody does that. So what you have left, if you have followed all the steps so far, is you have to draft all of your goals and you have to finalize a mission and a vision statement. So those goals should support your mission and vision in some way. Obviously, if your vision statement is for all children to be ready for kindergarten in your community, any goal about access or quality is going to support that. We just want to make sure that things are kind of aligned and that they make sense. So once you have drafted your finalized blueprint, please submit that to me if you can by January 21st at the end of the day. That's after Martin Luther King Jr. Day. If that doesn't work for you, let me know. What I really want to happen, because we want these blueprints submitted with your Super App application, which is due February 7th. So ideally, if you could get a draft of that completed blueprint to me, I could turn around and give you feedback and help you strengthen it before that super app date in February. So there's really a lot of different ways you can approach writing your mission and vision statement. You know, I always send a follow-up email after our webinars. So today I will, when in my email, I'll remind you of the resources we have available, and I'll also link the slides that describe what a mission and a vision statement look like. But I will say this, many of you have already included it in what you've sent me so far, and they all look really great and really fantastic and very very clear and strong. And I have a really good understanding of the direction you want to take from your mission and vision statements. So today we are going to, if you would like, take the survey. Let me link it because I know not everybody can get tiny URLs due to a filter. Okay. Ooh, I don't know what I just pressed there. So all we're asking from now on, we have 2 more webinars. And we are just asking that you attend those webinars and that you wrap up your blueprint. So if, I forgot to mention, if you are interested, if you feel stuck, if you feel like you don't know if you're moving in the right direction with your blueprint, please contact me directly and we can talk about it and maybe have a little consultation and we can look at what you've got so far. I'm happy to do that with you guys. But again, you should be expecting feedback from me shortly if you have not already gotten it. And we would love it if you could submit a final draft of your blueprint by January 21st at the end of the day. Are there any lingering questions before we sign off today? While I let you think about that, there might be someone typing in the chat box. I do want to say a huge thank you to Kay, who has been so instrumental in the whole Ready Start process and the Get Ready process. And I know you guys will also miss her as much as I do.
Lizzie, thank you. That's awfully nice.
So thanks, Kay, for everything.
Sure.
And I see in the chat box, Terabone would like to chat, so we'll give you a call, Terabone. If anybody else would like to chat, I know I owe Sabine a call as well. If anybody else would like to chat, feel free to send us an email or type it in the chat box right now. Okay. Thank you guys so much. Be looking for my follow-up email with a little more details about the next couple of weeks and what to expect. Again, Happy New Year to everybody. I hope you guys are off to a great start with 2020, and we'll chat soon. See you next week.